Hi, I am live. I'm alive! And today on A Reading Rage Inc., you may hear my dog eating their food in the background. Apologies. Just kidding. I'm not going to apologize for that. I'm glad that she's eating. I'm going to read a few poems and then I'm just going to give you a quick, brief opinion on them. And this is a social justice series of poems by Givhan. And the entire collection is called Protection Spell. I'm only going to be reading an excerpt of a few of them. So one of them is called Race in America. I'll start with that one. And the next one is going to be called An Editor Advised Me to Stop Writing Mother Bird Poems. And then the next one will be Mrs. Frances Nakai at the Birthday Party. I do want to give a trigger warning to everyone that this is going to be very sensitive topics, and they're going to deal with race and class issues and gender. And if you are going to be emotionally disturbed by any traumatic events in your life, please be warned. This is Race in America. Part 1. Domestic adoption. No joke. Black babies are cheaper. Hyphen. White ones cost 10 grand more. That's not how she phrased it on the phone. After the gauge of my uterus had fixed itself on empty, I'd made my peace with the threat of, "You're not my real mother," and called for information. But here's how it broke down. $30,000 in service fees for white babies. $20,000 for black. The wait list is shorter, she told me. Most of our couples want babies who look like them. Imagine her joy when she found out we were a biracial couple, Sunday and me. And we were looking for a black baby. Imagine how we took out loans, co-signed with my mother, and how the call came just 2 months later, faster than any other couple there. This is part 2. Strolling through Koreatown. New home where we'd sought peace after death threats posted on our apartment door. We watched the garbage truck lift its steely arms and heave our trash bin over its shoulders. The garbage man honks his horn. "Mac," you yell. You think all trucks are called that. A grandfather truddles his grandson. filled cart toward our neighborhood market. Fish fry in the air, fire bright koi in the pond. I don't need to convince you we're safe. You grin and say, "Hi." He nods. The other baby stares but says nothing. You peel the tan bark off a birch. Tree like a scab. Thumb it. Inspect it. Nice tree. So this next one, I have a little review about it, and I'll do that review after I read it. It's part 3 of Race in America. And the title is Rainstorm, parentheses, after the riots. It's written in a contrapuntal form, so if you buy the book, which I highly suggest, it's going to have lines in different parts of the page. Rainstorm after the riots. The child believes he is made only of glass until it rains. And the child walks the streets, umbrella less. Only then he can create with his body a prism, splitting light. I might never have seen. So when I wrote my review, and please note that I'm an amateur reviewer, and there's a lot that I'm sure I'm not grasping, but I'm going to give you my take on it. I must admit the contrapuntal form of this poem had me interpreting it in a few different ways. One of the ways led me to break down the poem in the following way. That when the author says her little boy thinks he's made of glass, his ego and identity are fragile and fractured. But at the beginning of the poem, the mother says about the child believes he is made only. And it's broken in 2 different places. The child believes. And then the second line is, he is made only. So how children, when we're really little, sometimes we think we're all created in this same image. We really believe in the good of the world, that everyone else thinks that too. And I still believe that for a long time. And it wasn't until I took a pedagogy class in my master's course about a year ago that I learned from the book by Ibram Kendi, the term colorblind. And I'm still on the fence about if that term, if opening my eyes was good or bad. And I know that sounds weird. I'm a white passing Latina. I'm fully Mexican, but Mexican American, and my Spanish isn't that good. But it wasn't until very recently that I noticed that it's important to recognize color, because then you see the inequities in society and you don't just whitewash everything and think everyone... I mean, I never thought that everyone had everything the same. I came from migrant farm worker family, and so I definitely know that some people get more than others. Some school districts get more than others. And I always knew that. I always had just multiracial friends ever since I was really little. Luckily, because my parents, it was never an issue. But it wasn't until this book by Ibram Kendi that I really started thinking like, wow, I don't acknowledge race enough. I need to acknowledge it more. And I think it kind of messed me up a bit in a bad way. I don't know if I should have stayed colorblind or not. But here I am now. I know the term, and I kind of feel like that, like I was like that little boy. The child believed. He is made only. We are all made only. But I definitely realize that we have to acknowledge the disparities and the social stratifications in our society. It's important. It's necessary. So those two lines hold so much weight, right? And then the little boy, his ego, his identity is fragile and fractured. He's made of glass, right? Is what she says. And he's afraid to go out in the turmoil of the riots. But when it does rain, it says he is umbrella-less, which I took to mean that he does not have a shield to weather the storm. However, when it mentions the rains, it could be a sign of washing away the violence and the people from the streets and all the chaos, or that society has finally woken up from the police brutality that has been neglected by society. And again, she sees her son fractured. But this time, his body is like a prism, splitting light, which makes him rare, like a diamond splitting light into a rainbow, which is a symbol of how Black lives are resilient and faceted like diamonds. At least that's what I took it to mean. So at first he's like glass, but then at the end he's like a prism of light, a diamond. Because of all the riots, their worth is being affirmed. Because social justice is being stood up for, minority lives, people of color, Black Americans were being affirmed in the fact that social justice needs to be done. And then it says, finally, when the mother says, I might have never seen. It's both an acknowledgement of her own realization of police brutality, but also how her son's identity is fractured, both fragile and beautiful, which I really loved, because I think a lot of people in America, that happened to them. They might have never seen. And so that was poem 1. The next poem is going to be called... An editor advised me to stop writing mother bird poems. And the title is actually a bit longer. And so I'm gonna, I could just go to the thing. Here it is. Oh no, that's the entire title. It's a mouthful. The kitchen of my past smells of carne adobada and green chiles blackened on the comal. These days, I don't even like to boil eggs for fear. I'll overcook them. The whites will ooze through cracked shells, streaming into grungy water I've forgotten to salt. My family could eat peanut butter sandwiches for dinner every night. Without complaint, I sit down to write. But what's the point? No matter how many beautiful stories I create, some man whose uncle raped his mother will snatch a young boy from the sidewalk. While he walks home, his mama waiting 2 blocks away for his cowboy hat to turn the corner. But the hat never comes, and the boy she nursed and sang Twinkle Star over and over while pouring bath water to soothe his fear of no more tears. Because even those burn, that boy who learned to read by memorizing all the books at bedtime, but never would eat anything green, not smothered in barbecue sauce. Gone. We vow never to let our children walk alone. But then my boy will run ahead in the mall, and I'll lose him. It won't matter how many poems or baths, except it will. Like peanut butter. The boy on the street, his 2 large cowboy boots, forever walking home toward his mama. His mama, forever on the porch, searching the skyline for a hat. So this has a lot of different things that I interpreted about it, and every single time that I read it, right? So if we don't look at the religious side of it, which I could do a separate interpretation about that, when she says, I don't even like to boil eggs for fear, part of me, when I read that, thinks, some people don't want to have kids because of the crazy times and the crazy world that we live in. And that if we don't take care of our kids enough, or if we helicopter them too much, or if we don't do the right thing, a lot of times we think crime can get to them, whether it's a person, whether it's a substance, whether it's something else. When we've forgotten to salt, when we've forgotten to pay enough attention to our children, and it doesn't have to be just our personal children, it can be our collective children, since all children, all people are family, no matter where you are in the world. It's our collective family. if we're not paying attention to the laws that are being passed and the things that are happening, our community suffers, right? And then, and so as I read this poem, I thought how trauma is passed down through generations. The narrator is using third person. Ooh, I think omniscient. Don't quiz me. But they're using a third person narrator that can see into each of the characters' lives, right? To let us know about the mother in the story, because there's two mothers, the narrator, and then the narrator's talking about, actually there's three mothers in the story. And so it's the narrator, the mother who has her son kidnapped, and the mother of the kidnapper. And so they let us know about the mother in the story who's the victim, as well as the pedophile's background who's the offender. I saw how vulnerable parents can be. But what I thought to write about was the offender's past and how when his uncle raped his mother, it not only impacted that woman's life, but in turn, how she must have treated her own son, and as he grew up, which led to him being an abductor and to his abduction of the victim's son, the one in the cowboy boots and the cowboy hat, right? This abduction then must have in turn not only impacted the mother of the kidnapped boy, but his friends, teachers, and the entire community, right? They're all waiting for this cowboy hat to turn the corner. And when she writes corner, it's in a line all by itself, letting you know early on that there's going to be death in the story, right? Because it's like a play on words, corner as in like esquina, right? Corner, but then also coroner, and she doesn't spell it that way, but we can interpret it that way, is the professional who looks over the dead body. And so we get that foreshadowing there in this poem. And we also know that in a lot of religions, woman is God, the divine feminine, right? And so she's looking for the hat, the crown, right? That's coming home. And so we have all these religious background that we could also interpret, and that could be something completely separate. And so it must have impacted the entire community, right? And by the entire community, even the heavens is what we could think. When someone inflicts pain on another person, they're inflicting it on themselves and their community. And trauma is cyclical. So not only when you're committing a crime does it hurt the person that you're offending, but it hurts you also deep down, whether you realize it or not. And so this poem is probably one of my favorites in the collection. And then there's all these smothered in barbecue sauce and then like burn and things of that nature, which could or could not mean like an allusion to hell. But I will not say that I think that that's actually what it means, because I don't. Besides, I'm not really someone who likes to believe in hell and the rivers of fire sort of thing. I think that the biggest hell would be for us to be reincarnated and have to do this whole the whole life over again. One part I did want to comment again is when she's talking about the mother pouring bathwater to soothe his fear of no more, and then it breaks up tears and no more. So another foreshadowing that the child is going to die, right? So it's just, trauma is cyclical, and we have to realize that it affects the entire community. And then the last poem that I will read is Mrs. Frances Nakai at the birthday party. After Laura Gilpin's photograph in The Enduring Navajo, a photograph taken in 1961. You dignify the rocker, your younger children, barefoot at your skirt, pearls, secure your neck. Your daughter stands guard from behind. Mrs. Frances Nakai of the woven blanket, your boy. Spoken code. 1932, you are a snapshot with him. The anthropologist said you showed incredible composure at a formal dinner you both attended, especially for someone who didn't speak a word of English. What Bignon smoke has eaten your Hogan? What box diorama spectacled theater of World War II? The red rock of your skin scorches. The photographer's lens, Laura, earned this picture. She saved your first boy once, gave him vaccinations. Your boy who should have been standing beside his dad. Where has he gone? In this 1950 family portrait. Your boy in whose place an American flag. So, in this poem, I was reminded of how Native Americans, their struggles, their nobility, their cultural of communal spirit and stewardship is still taken for granted to this day. When this poem speaks about how Mrs. Frances Nakai of the Woven Blanket Sun spoken code, it reminds me of how the Navajo language was used in World War II, because the language could not be broken. And okay, I am trying to learn Navajo right now, keyword trying. And let me say, it's one of the hardest languages I've tried to learn besides Chinese, honest to God. Yes, I'm also trying to learn Chinese. No, I'm not a communist. Yes, I do believe that oligarchies are fucked up and we need to take down Amazon. Okay, I said it. These brave soldiers who had their families displaced, these Native American soldiers who had their families displaced and killed for a century or more prior to that World War, decided that despite all the trauma and loss endured, they would save America as true stewards of this land. And even more than that, what this poem shows is that Native Americans are still being mistreated. Still. Their accomplishments and nobility is forgotten. And only an American flag left in their place in the family photo. That hit me hard, because at funerals I've attended, the veterans in my family have taps performed by other soldiers, right? And it's truly a somber and sobering thing to witness. And we're given a specially folded USA flag. I mean, think about it. In the case of minorities who have given their lives for a country who wants to put their tribes and reservations and keep them there and leave their only water sources poisoned. And for Mexican Americans who have their family kept out by walls and are threatened that they're not even going to get their citizenship even after they've served their term. Is a specially folded flag really enough? Okay, guys, that's it for today. That's all you get. I know that's probably all a lot of us can take at the moment. Those are 3 really heavy poems. The whole collection of poems is like that. So please feel free to check it out. It's amazing. Trigger warning. Don't read it if you are triggered by anything, because it covers everything in the book. No, I'm. It does have a lot of triggering things, but please read it. Please buy it. I really appreciate it. And if you can, please donate to. I would say any of the things that are relevant to Minnesota Freedom Fund. That gives money to bail any of the rioters and protesters out of jail, anything of that nature. Native Americans and their poison water supply. If you don't know anything about it, look it up. And follow your influencers, your minority influencers, please. Thanks so much. This is Reading Rage Inc. Hope you enjoyed. I have 2 separate streams running, so I'm going to try and end them at the same time. 1, 2, 3. Oh, I didn't do it. Have a good day. Sorry about the sad poems. For your reading sorrows, #. Thanks, guys.